Okay, this is not going to be as relevant for families. This is going to be relevant for businesses depending on where you are. There's a whole bunch of jargon that organizations have been using dependent on where you are. So, generally speaking, there's three tiers of organizational levels. There's three tiers of decision making that people operate within. You've got your strategic level, tactical level, and you've got your operational level. Now, this is how I think about things. This is very military jargony, but other organizations will call these things other things, but it's the same thing. So, strategic level is your level where decisions are being made about the entire organization, the direction things are going, general guidance. The strategic level is going to be your C-suite executives, your CEO, your COO, your CFO, your CTO, your executive officer, chief, your technology officer, chief, chief, all the C-suite stuff. The people that make the general directions and guidance for what we're going to do. The tactical level is going to take your directions and your guidance, and they're going to create a general guideline for how to implement. So they won't be doing the actual implementation, but they'll be taking this, okay, there's a great strategy that I saw used in healthcare, particular client relationship, it was two words. It was a two-word strategy, and it was brilliant because of the way it was implemented. The strategy was patient first. That's it. It was patient first. The implication of this strategy was, if you had a situation where this is a lot of money though, should we patient first, right? Now, because of the type of situation this was, that was definitely, in my opinion, the correct strategy. I know many hospital directors will hear that and will know the internals of medicine and go, that's expensive. But in this instance, highly practical. The tactical implementation of that is, okay, so if we're going to do patient first, that means we have to make sure that these processes are online, this sort of thing is going to happen. How are we going to kind of do that? So tactical is taking the strategy and turning it into tactics, turning it into things that we're going to do with it. The operational level is the execution of these tactics. So specifically, how do we do it? In a military strategy sort of example, the strategy might be, we'll use like ancient warfare. We're going to make a bunch of cavalry. We're going to raise horses, and we're going to have horses, and they're going to be fast, right? The tactics might be, okay, well, if we have horses, then we can do these sorts of things with horses. So we're going to come up with sort of like flanking maneuvers and whatever. We're going to use horses. We're going to train in these sorts of things. The operation is, okay, we're in the middle of a battle. We have this tactic. We have to execute it somehow. Specific thing on the ground. In a business, once again, you'd have general guidance. This is what we're going to do, C-suite. You'd have your director and your manager kind of figuring out how we're going to implement. And then you have your front line that is executing. They're doing the thing. Okay, how does this jargon translate into a bunch of other jargon? Instead of strategic, tactical, operational, we'll have things like, I did mention this, leadership, management, frontline. You'll probably commonly hear frontline worker, management, leadership team. Leadership is strategic, management's tactical, frontline is operational. It's the same thing. In the UK, actually, in the United Kingdom and a lot of Europe, you'll hear gold, silver, and bronze. They'll often classify C-suite or same strategic as gold. They'll classify management as the silver team, and they'll classify the frontline as bronze. It's the same thing. So you'll hear like, what's the 50,000 foot view? What's the 1,000 foot view? What's the ground level view? Give me your 100,000 foot idea. They're asking for a strategy. Give me your 500 feet. They're not saying ground level. It's a lowish number. They're talking about the tactic. What's your ground level? They want to know, boots on the ground. What's your operation? You'll hear that jargon. And I'm mentioning, I don't use all this jargon in this book. I'm just mentioning it, and I'm not going to try to use it this way either. I'll probably use strategic by and large, and I'll try to say operational. I'll be using those mainly, but you'll come across it, and when you do, it's the same thing. Last thing in the sort of concepts idea is you have function, process, and application. This is important when looking at how to structure an organization and how to do continuity when you get into the planning part a bit later. Almost exclusively in a business environment, we'll hear these three words: function, process, and application. A function is the overall thing. You're usually talking about something at a strategic level. So the function of sales. How does the company do sales? So you're talking about sales in the whole thing. The function of marketing, the function of finance, the function of operations. Now, the function of operations might be half of your business, right? We might be talking about just how do we operate, might be half the business, but you're talking about, big category stuff. When something impacts the function at the function level, you're talking about something that hits the whole thing. If we say this thing knocked out sales, that doesn't mean that we lost the ability to sell one thing. That means we can't sell. So an example of something that could knock out sales would be being debanked. So losing the ability to access a bank account is the sort of risk that would knock out sales. The reason I'm mentioning sales so often is because for a lot of companies, sales is a very common function. It's well understood. A lot of companies are very sales oriented, so that's why I'm giving that example. You have process. Process is the way thing is done. So you'll often have like a chain of, we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we do this, which results to this. It's a process, right? Functions are executed through processes. Something could interrupt a process, a way we do a particular type of sale. It is not necessarily going to knock out the entire function. Then you have application. The application is the individual things that make up each part of the process. So if you had a sales process where you would have an open and you'd have an intro, a cold call, something like that if you would, or a person enters your retail store and you say hello, you have your intro. You would have that, you would have your making of the sale, and you would have your close. And these could each be separate processes too, depending. And within the close, you would probably have some sort of upsell, an upsell being a, hey, why not buy this too, or something like that. You'd have some point of sale thing where you'd have to have something that can do a transaction through some sort of application, whatever. Each of those things is its own little application, okay? The reason why all of this is kind of granular and is mentioned is because with continuity, if you do the whole thing, you want to be able to see, okay, I knock out that, and then it turns out in 3 days, because that gets knocked out, that over there in that other function is now impacted. Huh. Cool. Right? So this is about making kind of like a map or a grid of how the entire business fundamentally works. So the function, process, and application jargon is going to get used. It's the standard thing that everybody uses. I haven't heard any other terms being used. They always use function, process, application. Yeah, they might not say sales function, but they'll say sales and it's a function. So it's just the way to think about it. Okay. So we've gone over the different concepts.